رحمن يا رحيم.
The time is just gone 11 minutes to 10 as we continue towards the final segment of this morning's broadcast. And from time to time, we are actually reminded so much about our history and our past. And early on, I was talking to somebody about the Cape Town heritage through art and a reminder of Islam through art in South Africa. And one person who has been reminding us and also looking at the legacy that have been left behind by personalities. Now, not long ago, he wrote a book and dedicated to Maulana Banu, rahimahullah, in Lenasia. And Lenasia has got such a rich history as well. And we are now talking about this latest book, which is entitled Teachers in the Struggle Against Apartheid Education, dedicated to the late veteran educationist Billy Morgan, who sadly passed away 2 weeks ago. And it's none other than Dr. Ismail Vadi, former education department lecturer and teacher unionist, to launch this new book on the 9th of September at the Lenasia Secondary School. Ismail Bhai, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Juma Mubarak.
Walaikum salam, Inayat. Walaikum salam, Abdullah.
Yes, it's not by people like yourselves, and you play such a vital role in the community. And many a times we speak about going back about the stark reminders about people who have shaped our lives, people who have struggled, people who have contributed so much to where we are at this point in time as a democracy. And these are people within our own communities whom sadly at times we forget or we don't know about. And this is the reason, why you've undertaken this journey to write about these people and the teachers in the struggle against apartheid education. Those of us that have grown up in the apartheid era, we know what their struggles were. And again, serving the stark reminder. And I'm sure this book, not only acknowledging and dedicating it to people, but also reminding us of this ugly past of ours.
I think up till now we've been focusing on political leaders in the community. So, like Dr. Isub Jussa, Dr. Rashid Saluchi, the late Isub Chiba, Ahmed Katwada, etc. I think they've earned their place. People have come to understand, even the younger generation are somewhat aware of their contribution to the struggle for freedom in this country. But an area that has been sorely neglected has really been the role of teachers in the fight against apartheid education. Now they were, under the old Department of Indian Affairs, which later became the Department of Education and Culture in the House of Delegates after 1994. There were about 7,500 to 8,000 teachers. Not all of them were involved in the fight against apartheid education, but there was small core of teachers who were principled, who had a moral vision, who were opposed to apartheid in all its manifestations, but particularly in education, and who were determined to take a stand against it. So Mr. Billy Morgan, that passed away a few days ago, would be amongst, I think, one of those leaders who, from the late 1950s, since he started teaching, has consistently stood up against apartheid education, and for that he paid a heavy price. I mean, for almost 30 years he wasn't promoted. He was left as a level one teacher for many years at Lens High School. When his juniors were being promoted as heads of departments or deputy principals and even principals, Mr. Billy Morgan was held back. But today, who remembers him? And like that, there have been so many other teachers from the Lenasia community who have made an outstanding contribution in the fight against apartheid education, but also against apartheid more generally and more broadly. And I think this book celebrates their lives, their contributions. Some of them are still alive. Some have, a good many have passed on already. But it's important that we don't forget and that we honor these people who've made an outstanding contribution to our freedom struggle.
Yes, so interesting that you single out teachers, Ismail, because when we look at people like Ahmed Timol, he was a teacher. When we look at Imam Abdullah Harun, rahimahumullah, as well, he was a teacher as well. Now, these are people that obviously paid the ultimate price. But like you mentioned, people like Billy Morgan those these are people that can easily be forgotten. And again, looking at not only recognizing or acknowledging the people, but also acknowledging their work that they do, the challenges that they face, so that we can appreciate what we have today.
Yeah, so I mean, if you take a young person like Sean Bolton, who I think people know in the community as the CEO of the Ahmed Katwada Foundation. He was a former teacher at Topaz Secondary School. He started teaching there in the mid 1980s. And on the 1st of January 1988, after being in the profession for 3 years as a temporary teacher, when he reported for duty at the beginning of the school year in January, there was a letter waiting for him. And Mr. Ptial was the principal, basically said, "There's some letter for you." He opened it, and it was an on-the-spot dismissal. The department simply informed him, "We don't need your services," and uh, and he was fired. And that's because a few months before that, he was detained by the security police at the Protea police station because of his activism in the youth movement, etc. And so he was just dismissed. So his entire career was simply cut short. If I take Sadek Vaviava, I mean, from the Black Consciousness movement, Sadek graduated from the Old Transvaal College of Education, and he was appointed to Lens High School as a teacher. He duly went there on the first day of the school term, and on the third day, he got a letter from the department saying that his services were terminated. Probably Sadek stands out as the only teacher in the history of South Africa who was fired within 3 days. His entire career was completely shattered. Of course, he went on to play a bigger role in theatre and politically. But who remembers Sadek Vavieva today as a teacher who was fired, and who recognizes that contribution? So, like that, there are so many. I in the book I have prepared the biography, short biographies, with some people assisting as writers of about 45 teachers in the Lenasia and Johannesburg community who made an outstanding contribution. Some had gone into exile. If I take Bobby and Tommy Vassant, the Vassant brothers. Billy Nannan was an outstanding mathematics teacher. He had to go into exile. So a good number of our top teachers were forced to leave the country because of the political situation and because they faced banning orders. And then others remained and were not promoted. They were victimized. They were transferred to outlying areas, and some of them were just fired. So I think this book celebrates that, those names. It honors them. But also importantly, Inayat, is that in 1955, when the government was trying to force Indian people to move to Lenasia, what they did is that they shut down the Boysons High School at the end of 1994, and they forced the learners to now register at the Lens High School, which was the first high school built in the community. And the Transvaal Indian Congress took a decision that it would open its own school in central Johannesburg or in Fortsburg, and it established the Congress School, the Central Indian High School. And hundreds of learners refused to register at Lens High, refused to move to Lens High, and went to the Congress School. That school survived for about 7 or 8 years, was possibly the first really non-racial school in the country, had teachers, all teachers who were from the Congress movement. So they were highly politically aware people. And many of our leaders in subsequent years that came out in the Transvaal Indian Youth Congress or the Transvaal Indian Congress went to the Congress High School. Again, in the Fortsburg area, there's not even a plaque or a stone commemorating that particular institution. So I'm hoping that this will spark some energy in our community, and that we reflect on this history and we try and preserve this legacy.
Well, definitely. And we know September is Heritage Month for us here in South Africa, and it is a heritage that needs to be celebrated to be reminded of the legacy of the contribution of these people. In fact, some of the names that you mentioned to me as names that I can't quite recall and remember. So this is absolutely important. This is critical, Ismail Bhai. Just take us through the launch that is taking place on the 9th of September.
So the launch will be on next week, Saturday, 9th of September at 2:30 p.m. at the Lenasia Secondary School, or what people know as Lens High School. We also thought it's important to turn this launch into a tribute to Mr. Buddy Morgan. I mean, he passed away a few days ago. It will not make sense to have a separate memorial meeting for him, so we thought we will have this as a memorial meeting for him. At the same time, have get the book launched, because it is an education book. It's a book about teachers, and I think it will be a fitting tribute to Mr. Buddy Morgan, who, as I said, has made an outstanding contribution to this community. Of course, there were others. If you take Mr. Ratan Sami, who was a principal at Nirvana High School for over 30 years. Again, a man who's made an outstanding contribution to education in the community. But we can't forget these educationists. It's important that we recognize them, we honor them, and of course celebrate their lasting contribution. And this book is really about that.
For anyone wanting the book, who can they contact?
It's self-published, so it will be available at the launch, and otherwise it will be available from myself. From myself.
Well, Ismail Bhai, Jazakallah khairan so much once again. We congratulate you on another achievement, and Allah keep you strong, Allah keep you healthy to continue the wonderful work. And every time I get to talk to you about a book and about someone that you are recognizing in the book and reminding the readers about, really, it just keeps us inspired, it keeps us energized, and we just want to know more. So for that, well done to you as well. And we
Like,
wish you well. Inshallah, have yourself a wonderful Jummah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ismail Vadi with us this morning, also former Wits Education Department lecturer. Again, the book launch, and very, very interesting. And this is a book which is entitled Teachers in the Struggle Against Apartheid Education.